You want to know why your business dreams keep dying before they even take their first breath? I can tell you exactly why, and it has nothing to do with lack of capital, wrong timing, or bad luck. You sit there night after night, staring at business plans that grow more elaborate with each revision, adding more product, more service, more market segment, convincing yourself that bigger is better, that if you just offer enough to enough people, success will be inevitable. You tell yourself you need the perfect website, the complete product line, the full team assembled before you can launch. Meanwhile, months turn into years, and that fire in your belly that once made you believe you were meant for more than a paycheck slowly dims into a quiet resignation that maybe entrepreneurship just was not meant for you. But here is what nobody is telling you, and what John D. Rockefeller understood better than perhaps any businessman in history. The strategy that took him from absolutely nothing to building the most dominant business empire America had ever seen was not complexity. It was not diversification. It was not trying to be everything to everyone. It was the exact opposite. And it is the one truth that could change everything for you if you will just hear it and act on it. Rockefeller started with nothing. Let that sink in for a moment. The man who would become the richest person in modern history, whose wealth adjusted for inflation would dwarf that of today's tech billionaires, began with absolutely nothing. No inheritance, no connections, no venture capital waiting in the wings. He started as a bookkeeper, and when he finally scraped together enough money to go into business, he did not try to conquer the world. He did not attempt to revolutionize multiple industries simultaneously. He did not spread himself thin trying to appeal to every possible customer. He did something that most aspiring entrepreneurs today would consider foolish, limiting, even cowardly. He focused on one thing and one thing only, and he became so exceptionally good at that one thing that he dominated it completely before he ever considered expanding. This was not just a business strategy. This was a life philosophy, and it is rooted in a principle that we as believers should recognize immediately because it echoes throughout Scripture. The principle of faithful stewardship over the little before being entrusted with much. You see, we live in a culture that worships the idea of the overnight success, the viral moment, the sudden breakthrough that catapults unknowns into stardom. We scroll through social media seeing people who seem to have built empires in months, and we think we need to do the same. We think we need to launch big, announce loudly, and capture as much market share as possible right out of the gate. But this is an illusion, a carefully curated highlight reel that leaves out the years of focused, unsexy work that actually built the foundation. Rockefeller understood something that most people today refuse to accept. Greatness is not built in the spotlight. Greatness is built in the shadows, in the small spaces where no one is watching, where you are serving one customer at a time, perfecting one skill at a time, mastering one process at a time. This is where empires are actually born, not in the grand announcements and elaborate launch events, but in the quiet, disciplined execution of excellence in a specific domain. When Rockefeller entered the oil business, he did not try to do everything. He did not attempt to drill for oil, refine it, distribute it, and retail it all at once. He started with one specific function in the oil supply chain, refining, and he did not just refine oil. He became obsessed with refining it better, cheaper, and more efficiently than anyone else in the world. While his competitors were spreading their resources across multiple ventures, trying to control every aspect of the oil business from exploration to retail, Rockefeller was studying every detail of the refining process. He was analyzing every cost, every waste point, every inefficiency. He was innovating in ways his competitors considered too minor to matter. He would find uses for byproducts that other refineries simply discarded. He negotiated better rates with railroads because his volume and reliability made him valuable. He standardized his processes so that every barrel of oil that came out of his refinery met exacting quality standards. This was not glamorous work. This was not the stuff of inspiring business magazine covers. But this was the work that built an empire. And here is what most people miss about this strategy. Rockefeller was not playing small. He was not thinking small. His vision was massive from the beginning. But he understood that the path to massive vision is through absolute mastery of small execution. He understood that you cannot steward an empire if you cannot first steward a single operation with excellence. He understood that trying to do 10 things adequately will always lose to doing one thing exceptionally. This is not just sound business wisdom. This is biblical principle lived out in the marketplace. When Jesus told the parable of the talents, what was the commendation given to the faithful servant? You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Not, you had a great business plan for many things, so I will give you many things. Not, you had big dreams about many things, so here are many things. No, faithfulness with the few, mastery of the small, excellence in the specific. This is the pathway to greater responsibility, greater resources, greater impact. But let me ask you something, and I want you to really sit with this question for a moment. What is the one thing you could become absolutely exceptional at? Not good at, not adequate at, not competitive at, exceptional at. What is the one service, one product, one solution that you could deliver at such a high level that people would have to be foolish to go anywhere else? What is the one problem you could solve so thoroughly, so consistently, so remarkably well, that your reputation would build itself through the quality of your work, rather than the volume of your marketing? Because here is what I can promise you. If you will identify that one thing and commit yourself to mastering it, with the kind of focused intensity that Rockefeller brought to oil refining, you will build something of value. You will create something that lasts. You will establish something that cannot be easily replicated or commoditized. And from that foundation of mastery, you can expand. From that position of strength, you can diversify. From that place of proven excellence, you can grow. But you must start with the one thing. Now, before we go any further, I need to pause here because I know some of you are sitting there right now feeling something. Maybe it is conviction. Maybe it is recognition. Maybe it is that uncomfortable mixture of hope and fear that comes when you realize you have been approaching this all wrong. But there is still time to change course. And I want to hear from you right now because your story matters. Your struggle matters. The specific challenge you are facing with your business or your business dreams matters. So I want you to do something that might feel vulnerable, but I promise you it is powerful. Drop a comment right now using this simple format. My biggest challenge with starting a business is blank, and I want to overcome it because blank. Fill in those blanks with your honest truth. Maybe your biggest challenge is analysis paralysis, and you want to overcome it because you are tired of watching years slip by while your dreams stay dreams. Maybe your challenge is fear of failure, and you want to overcome it because you know God has called you to more than you are currently walking in. Maybe your challenge is lack of focus, and you want to overcome it because you are exhausted from spreading yourself too thin. Whatever it is, write it down in the comments. Not only will your transparency help other people realize they are not alone in their struggles, but it also helps me create content that addresses the real issues you are actually facing, not just theoretical problems. And here is the truth. The moment you articulate your challenge clearly, you take the first step toward overcoming it. Naming the obstacle is the beginning of moving past it. So go ahead, drop that comment right now. Your honesty might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Now let me tell you why this one thing strategy is so powerful, especially for believers who are called to use business as a vehicle for kingdom impact. When you focus on becoming exceptional at one specific thing, several critical advantages emerge that most people never consider. First, you develop what I call compounding expertise. Every hour you invest in that one thing builds on the previous hour. Every client you serve in that one area teaches you something that makes you better for the next client. Every problem you solve in that specific domain adds to your database of solutions. This compounding effect is impossible when you are spreading your attention across multiple different business models, multiple different services, multiple different target markets. Shallow knowledge in many areas will always lose to deep expertise in one area. And depth of expertise is what creates real value in the marketplace. Depth is what allows you to charge premium prices. Depth is what builds word-of-mouth reputation. Depth is what creates competitive moats that protect your business from being easily replicated. Second, when you focus on one thing, you develop what Rockefeller understood as systems mastery. You can create processes that become more efficient with each iteration. You can identify and eliminate waste in ways that generalists never can. You can optimize and refine until what you do becomes not just better than the competition, but so much better that you essentially operate in a category of one. Rockefeller did not just refine oil. He refined the process of refining oil until his costs were so low and his quality so high that he could undercut competitors while still making higher margins. This is the power of focused mastery. You can do something so well and so efficiently that the economics work in your favor in ways they never could if you were spreading yourself across multiple business models. Third, and this is crucial, focused mastery creates clarity in your marketing and sales. When you do one thing exceptionally well, your message becomes crystal clear. You know exactly who your ideal client is. You know exactly what problem you solve. You know exactly how to communicate your value. Compare this to the entrepreneur who is trying to be all things to all people. Their website is confusing. Their elevator pitch is muddled. Their target market is everyone, which means their target market is actually no one. They waste precious resources trying to reach broad audiences with generic messages when they should be reaching specific audiences with specific solutions. Rockefeller did not have to convince everyone in America that they needed his refined oil. He had to convince other businesses in the oil industry that his refining was the best option. Narrow focus, clear message, undeniable value proposition. This is how you actually break through the noise. But here is where this gets really interesting from a kingdom perspective. When you become known for excellence in a specific area, when you build a reputation for being the absolute best at solving a particular problem, you create a platform for influence that extends far beyond the transaction. People do not just buy your product or service. They begin to trust your judgment. They begin to ask your advice. They begin to see you as an authority. And with that authority comes opportunity to speak truth, to demonstrate integrity, to model a different way of doing business. This is what it means to be salt and light in the marketplace, not preaching at people, but living out excellence rooted in biblical principles so consistently that people cannot help but notice. There is something different about the way you operate. Rockefeller, despite his reputation in some circles as a ruthless businessman, was actually known for several qualities that reflected his Baptist upbringing: meticulous honesty in his accounting, reliability in his commitment, sobriety and discipline in his personal life. These were not religious window dressing. These were the character foundations upon which his business excellence was built. And people noticed. People respected it. People wanted to work with someone they could trust in an industry notorious for speculation and fraud. So let me get practical with you for a moment, because this is not just theory. This is the actual path forward for your business dream. If you are sitting there with a business idea that involves multiple revenue streams, multiple target markets, multiple product lines right from the start, I am going to challenge you to do something difficult but liberating. I want you to strip it all down to the core. What is the one thing that, if you did it exceptionally well, would make everything else possible later? What is the one skill, one service, one product that represents the foundation upon which everything else could eventually be built? For some of you, that might mean taking a business plan that currently has 6 different service offerings and focusing exclusively on the one that you can deliver at the highest level. For others, it might mean taking a product idea and, instead of trying to launch with an entire line, starting with the one flagship product and making it undeniably great. For others still, it might mean identifying a very specific niche within your industry and becoming the absolute go-to expert for that niche rather than trying to serve the entire market. This is going to feel limiting at first. Your brain is going to resist it. You are going to think about all the opportunities you might be missing. You are going to worry that focusing too narrowly will limit your potential revenue. You are going to fear that by choosing one thing, you are somehow leaving value on the table. But this is exactly the lie that keeps most businesses from ever achieving their potential. The truth is the opposite. By refusing to choose one thing, by trying to keep all your options open, by attempting to serve everyone and offer everything, you guarantee mediocrity. You guarantee that you will be stretched too thin to execute anything with true excellence. You guarantee that your message will be too generic to break through, your offering too vague to compel action, your systems too complex to optimize. The paradox of business success is that constraint creates power. Limitation creates possibility. Narrow focus creates broad impact. This is why Rockefeller, who started by focusing exclusively on refining oil as efficiently as possible, eventually came to dominate virtually every aspect of the oil industry. But that domination came later. It came after. It came as a result of the foundation of mastery he built first, And I want to be very clear about something because I know some of you are hearing this through a lens of false humility or religious limitation. This is not about playing small. This is not about hiding your light under a basket. This is not about being content with mediocrity in the name of humility. This is about being strategic. This is about being wise stewards of limited resources. This is about building something that actually works rather than something that just looks impressive on paper. Jesus himself taught this principle. Which of you, wanting to build a tower, does not first sit down and calculate the cost to see if he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, after he has laid the foundation and cannot finish it, all who see it will begin to ridicule him, saying, "This man started to build and was not able to finish." This is wisdom. This is smart planning, starting with what you can actually execute with excellence rather than what sounds ambitious but exceeds your current capacity. And here is what happens when you follow this wisdom. You actually finish what you start. You actually build something real rather than abandoning multiple half-finished projects. You actually create value in the marketplace rather than just creating noise. Let me give you another angle on this that I think is crucial. When Rockefeller focused on becoming the best refiner of oil, he was not just learning how to refine oil. He was learning how to run a business. He was learning about operations management, supply chain optimization, financial controls, quality assurance, customer relations, employee management, strategic negotiations. All of these skills were being developed within the context of one specific operation, but they were transferable skills that would serve him throughout his entire business career. This is another massive advantage of the focused approach. You develop business acumen through concentrated practice rather than diluting your learning across too many variables. Every business, no matter how simple or specific, requires you to master the fundamentals: sales, operations, finance, people management, strategic thinking. But trying to master these fundamentals while simultaneously juggling multiple different business models or product lines is like trying to learn to play the piano while someone keeps changing which instrument you are playing. The focused approach allows you to develop these core competencies in a context where you can actually see the cause and effect relationship between your decisions and your results. And this brings me to something that I think is absolutely critical for believers to understand. Business is not separate from your spiritual development. Business is actually one of the primary classrooms where God forms your character, tests your faith, and prepares you for greater responsibility in His kingdom. The discipline required to focus on one thing, when everything in our culture screams at you to diversify. The patience required to master something deeply when everyone around you seems to be pivoting and chasing the next shiny opportunity. The faithfulness required to keep showing up and executing with excellence even when growth is slower than you hoped. These are not just business virtues. These are spiritual disciplines that transform you into the kind of person who can be trusted with more. And here is what most people miss. God is less interested in the size of your business than He is in the size of your character. He is less concerned with how much revenue you generate than He is with how you generate that revenue. He is less focused on how quickly you scale than He is on whether you maintain your integrity as you grow. The focused, mastery-based approach to business is actually a character-building exercise disguised as a business strategy. Rockefeller understood something else that is absolutely crucial to this conversation. He understood that true wealth is not built through income. True wealth is built through equity. And equity is built through creating something of genuine, enduring value. When you become exceptionally good at one thing, you create an asset. You create something that has value beyond your personal labor. You create systems, processes, reputation, client relationships, intellectual property that can be leveraged, scaled, or even sold. But when you are just doing random tasks for random clients with no focused specialty, you have not built an asset. You have just created a job for yourself. There is a massive difference between being self-employed and being a business owner. Self-employment means you trade your time for money. Business ownership means you have created something that produces value even when you are not personally performing every task. And you cannot build that kind of business by being a generalist who does whatever clients ask for. You build it by becoming so good at a specific thing that people seek you out specifically for that expertise. And then you create systems and hire people who can deliver that expertise at scale. Now let me address something that I know is running through some of your minds right now. You are thinking, But what if I choose the wrong thing? What if I focus all my energy on becoming great at something, and then the market changes, or I discover it was not the right fit? This is a valid concern, but it is also a fear that paralyzes more entrepreneurs than actual failure ever does. Here is the truth. The cost of choosing wrong is far less than the cost of never choosing at all. If you spend 2 years becoming exceptionally good at something, and then discover it is not your ultimate calling, you have not wasted those 2 years. You have learned invaluable lessons about business, about yourself, about execution, about perseverance. You have developed transferable skills. You have built confidence through achievement. You have proven to yourself and the world that you can commit to something and see it through to mastery. All of this positions you for success in whatever you pursue next. But if you spend those same 2 years dabbling in multiple directions, never fully committing to mastering anything, you end those 2 years with nothing substantial to show for your effort. No deep expertise, no proven systems, no compelling portfolio, no clear reputation. Just a scattered collection of surface-level experiences that do not add up to anything of real value. And here is something else that rarely gets talked about. The process of pursuing mastery in one specific area will clarify whether it is the right thing for you much faster than trying to keep your options open. When you fully commit to becoming exceptional at something, you quickly discover whether you have genuine passion for it, whether you have natural aptitude for it, whether the market values it the way you thought it would. This feedback loop is accelerated by commitment, not hindered by it. Dabbling tells you almost nothing. Full engagement tells you everything. So the question is not whether you might choose wrong. The question is whether you are willing to fully engage with something long enough to discover whether it is right. And I would argue that from a faith perspective, God is far more interested in your wholehearted engagement than in your perfect initial choice. He can redirect committed motion much more easily than he can do anything with someone sitting still, afraid to move, because they might move in the wrong direction. Think about this in terms of the great men and women of faith throughout history. Were they people who kept all their options open, who hedged their bets, who diversified their activities to minimize risk? Or were they people who heard a call, committed fully to that call, and trusted God with the outcome? Moses did not keep one foot in Midian in case the whole Exodus thing did not work out. David did not maintain a backup career in music in case the whole king thing fell through. Paul did not continue making tents just in case this spreading the gospel thing did not pan out. They committed, they focused, they went all in on their calling. And yes, the path was not always straight. Yes, there were setbacks and recalibrations, but the commitment, the focus, the willingness to pour themselves fully into one thing rather than hedging across many things, that was what allowed God to do extraordinary things through ordinary people. And this brings us back to Rockefeller and the principle that made him not just wealthy, but genuinely impactful. By mastering one thing first, he created a foundation of competence and credibility that allowed him to eventually expand into related areas from a position of strength rather than desperation. Standard Oil did not start as a conglomerate trying to control every aspect of the oil business. It started as a refinery that was so good at refining that it could afford to buy other refineries and bring them up to its standard. Then, from that position of dominance in refining, it could integrate backward into drilling and forward into distribution. But the expansion always came from strength, never from weakness, always from proven capability, never from hopeful speculation. This is the model. Master the core, prove the concept, build the reputation, establish the cash flow. Then and only then expand from that foundation. Not before. Not while you are still trying to figure out the basics. Not while you are still operating on hope and prayer rather than proven systems and satisfied customers. Here is a question I want you to ask yourself honestly. If you had to support yourself for the next year exclusively through one service or product, what would it be? Not what would be most exciting, not what has the biggest potential market, not what would make the best story on social media. What could you actually deliver at a high enough level, consistently enough, that people would pay you enough money to sustain yourself? Because that question cuts through all the fantasy and forces you to confront reality. And reality is where business actually happens. Business is not built in the realm of ideas and possibilities. Business is built in the realm of execution and delivery. And you can only execute and deliver at a high level when you are focused on something specific enough to master. This is not limiting. This is liberating, because once you answer that question honestly, you know where to pour your energy. You know what to say no to. You know how to allocate your limited time and resources. You have clarity, and clarity is the most valuable asset an entrepreneur can have. Let me paint you a picture of what this looks like practically. Imagine two people both wanting to start a business in the same general industry. Person A has a business plan that includes 3 different service tiers, 5 different target markets, plans to create digital products, plans to offer consulting, plans to build a software platform, and aspirations to eventually franchise the model. Person B has decided to offer one specific service to one specific type of client and has committed to becoming the absolute best in the region at delivering that service. Who do you think is more likely to still be in business 3 years from now? Who do you think is more likely to have a waiting list of clients? Who do you think is more likely to have built something of actual value? The answer is obvious, but it goes against everything our achievement-oriented, opportunity-obsessed culture tells us. We have been conditioned to believe that more is better, that keeping options open is smart, that diversification is the key to success. But in the early stages of building a business, these principles work against you. They divide your attention, dilute your message, complicate your operations, and prevent you from achieving the level of excellence that actually attracts clients and builds business. Rockefeller had another principle that went hand in hand with his focus on mastery. He was absolutely obsessed with efficiency and cost control, not in a miserly, penny-pinching way, but in a way that reflected deep respect for resources and commitment to stewardship. He famously would tour his refineries looking for ways to save even small amounts on each unit of production. He once observed that solder was used to seal the tops of oil cans, and he asked the workers how many drops of solder they used per can. They told him 40 drops. He asked them to try 39 drops. Some of the cans leaked. He asked them to try 38 drops. Those held. That one tiny innovation, saving 2 drops of solder per can, saved thousands of dollars annually across millions of cans. This was not greed. This was excellence. This was mastery. This was the mindset of someone who understood that in business, the small things compound into big things, and paying attention to details that others overlook is often the difference between profit and loss, between sustainability and failure. And this kind of attention to detail is only possible when you are focused enough to actually understand your business at a granular level. When you are spread across too many different operations, you cannot possibly achieve this level of operational excellence. You are just keeping your head above water, not optimizing and refining your systems. Now I want to shift gears for a moment and talk about something that I think is deeply important for believers in the marketplace. There is a tendency in Christian culture to spiritualize everything to the point where practical wisdom gets dismissed as worldly thinking. Some people hear business advice like, focus on one thing and master it, and they immediately push back with spiritual-sounding objections. God is bigger than our limitations. We should not put God in a box. We should attempt great things for God. We should dream without limits, and all of that is true at one level, but it completely misses the point. God is not limited, but we are. God does not need focused strategy, but we do. God can accomplish anything instantly, but He chooses to work through people, through time, through process. And the process He has built into reality includes the principle of focused effort producing compounded results. This is not worldly wisdom. This is wisdom, period. It is true whether you are a believer or not, because it reflects how God designed reality to function, and ignoring it in the name of faith is not faith. It is foolishness. Throughout Scripture, we see this pattern over and over. God gives someone a specific assignment, a specific call, a specific focus. Build this ark. Lead these people. Rebuild this wall. Preach in this region. Write these letters. The scope is defined. The mission is clear. And through focused, sustained obedience to that specific call, kingdom purposes are accomplished. We do not see God telling people to do everything, be everywhere, help everyone, all at the same time. We see God giving people specific assignments suited to their specific gifts and calling them to faithfulness in those specific assignments. This is the model, not limitless, unfocused activity, but specific, sustained, excellent execution of a clear mission. And when we apply this to business, It means identifying the specific thing we are called and equipped to do in the marketplace, and doing that thing with such excellence that it becomes an act of worship, a demonstration of faithfulness, a platform for kingdom impact. Here is another dimension of this that I think is crucial. When you focus on becoming exceptional at one thing, you naturally begin to develop what could be called domain authority. People start to see you as the expert, the specialist, the go-to person for that specific thing. And in today's information-saturated, option-overwhelmed marketplace, this kind of authority is incredibly valuable. People are drowning in choices. They do not need more options. They need clarity. They need confidence that they are making the right choice. And that confidence comes from working with someone who is clearly the best at what they do, not someone who does a little bit of everything adequately. Think about your own behavior as a consumer. When you have a serious problem that needs solving, do you want a generalist who kind of knows about that problem among many others? Or do you want a specialist who has solved that specific problem hundreds of times and knows every nuance of it? The answer is obvious. You want the specialist. You want the expert. You want the person who has focused their career on mastering that specific domain, and you are willing to pay more for that expertise. This is how value is created in the modern economy, not through being a jack of all trades, but through being the undisputed master of one trade. And this creates a beautiful flywheel effect. As you become known for being exceptional at one specific thing, more people come to you for that thing. As more people come to you, you gain more practice, more feedback, more opportunities to refine your systems. As you refine your systems, you become even more exceptional. As you become more exceptional, your reputation grows, and even more people seek you out. This is how dominance in a niche is established, not through marketing hype, not through flashy branding, but through consistent, focused execution of excellence over time. And once you have established that dominance, once you have become the go-to person or business in your domain, you have created something of tremendous value. You have created a business that generates profit, yes, but more importantly, you have created a platform for influence, for impact, for demonstrating a different way of operating in the marketplace. Let me tell you what happens when you commit to this path. In the early days, it feels slow. It feels limited. You see other people who seem to be doing more, launching bigger, growing faster. You question whether you are playing too small. You wonder if you should expand sooner. You feel the pressure to add more services, reach more markets, create more product. But if you resist that pressure and stay focused, something remarkable happens. You start to see the compound effect of mastery. Your skills sharpen, your systems improve, your reputation spreads, your clients become advocates, your work becomes referable. And while everyone else is still pivoting and chasing and trying to figure out their message, you are becoming undeniable in your specific domain. This is what Rockefeller experienced. While his competitors were constantly diversifying, constantly experimenting with new ventures, constantly spreading themselves thin, he was becoming better and better and better at the one thing he had committed to mastering. And that mastery created a competitive advantage that was almost impossible to overcome. Now, I know some of you are sitting there thinking, but I have so many gifts, so many interests, so many things I could do well. How do I choose just one? This is a common struggle, especially for gifted people who have multiple areas of competency. But here is what I have observed over years of working with entrepreneurs and business owners. The people who succeed are not always the most talented. They are not always the most gifted. They are the most focused. They are the ones who have the discipline to choose one path and commit to it fully, even when other paths look tempting. And here is the irony. By fully committing to one thing, you actually end up using more of your gifts than you would by spreading yourself across multiple things. Because mastery of anything requires you to bring all of yourself to that thing. It requires creativity, strategic thinking, problem solving, communication, leadership, all of it. The depth of engagement required to truly master something draws on all of your faculties in ways that superficial engagement with many things never does. So the question is not which of your gifts you will use. The question is where will you focus those gifts to create the maximum impact. And let me add this. Your choice is not permanent. Life is long. Business is dynamic. The one thing you choose to master now does not have to be the one thing you do for the rest of your life, but it needs to be the one thing you commit to for long enough to actually build something of value. And long enough is not 3 months or 6 months. It is more like 3 years to 5 years to really establish dominance in a domain. This sounds like a long time when you are at the beginning, eager to see results, anxious to succeed. But it is actually a very short time in the context of a career, in the context of a life, in the context of building something that truly matters. And those years will pass whether you spend them focused on mastering something or scattered across multiple failed attempts at doing too much. The difference is what you have to show for those years at the end. Rockefeller spent decades focused on oil. He did not pivot to railroads when railroads were booming. He did not pivot to steel when steel was the hot industry. He stayed in his lane. He dominated his domain. And from that foundation of dominance, he was able to do things that would have been impossible if he had been jumping from opportunity to opportunity. This is the power of sustained focus. This is the wealth-building potential of mastery. Not quick wins and lucky breaks, but the slow, steady accumulation of expertise, systems, relationships, and reputation that eventually creates something that seems like an overnight success to outsiders, but was actually years in the making. Now, here is where this gets really practical. You might be sitting there saying, okay, I am convinced, I need to focus on one thing, but I still do not know what that one thing should be. How do I choose? Let me give you a framework that I have seen work again and again. First, look at the intersection of 3 things. What are you good at? What does the market need and value enough to pay for? What could you stay engaged with for years without burning out? The sweet spot is where those 3 circles overlap. That is your one thing, not just what you are good at, because you can be good at things that no one will pay for. Not just what the market needs, because you can identify needs that you have no interest in or ability to fill. Not just what you are passionate about, because passion without skill or market demand leads to a hobby, not a business. But where all 3 overlap, that is where you find your focus. Second, think in terms of who you serve and what problem you solve for them, not what you do. This is a critical distinction. What you do is a feature. Who you serve and what problem you solve is the benefit. And benefits sell. Features do not. Rockefeller did not sell refined oil. He solved the problem of unreliable, inconsistent, expensive fuel for businesses that needed it. That problem-solving orientation kept him focused on what mattered, making his product better and cheaper than anyone else. So your one thing should be defined not as I offer graphic design services or I sell handmade jewelry, but as I help small business owners communicate their brand effectively through visual identity, or I create heirloom-quality pieces that help families celebrate significant life moments. Do you see the difference? One is about what you do, the other is about who you serve and what you help them accomplish. The second version gives you clarity about who to talk to and what to say. It gives you a framework for getting better at your craft, because you are always asking, is this actually solving the problem my clients have better than before? Third, start even smaller than you think you should. If you think your one thing is financial planning for families, narrow it further. Financial planning for young families buying their first home. If you think your one thing is fitness coaching, narrow it further. Strength training for women over 40 who have never lifted weights before. If you think your one thing is business consulting, narrow it further. Operations consulting for service businesses doing between 1 million and 5 million in revenue. The more specific you can be, the easier everything else becomes. Marketing becomes easier because you know exactly who you are talking to and where to find them. Sales becomes easier because your message resonates deeply with a specific type of person, rather than vaguely with everyone. Service delivery becomes easier because you are solving the same core problem repeatedly, learning and improving with each client. This is how you build mastery. This is how you create value. This is how you establish a business that thrives rather than just survives. And if you have been with me this far, if these principles are resonating with you, if you are feeling that mixture of conviction and excitement that comes when truth connects with readiness, I want to invite you to take the next step in this journey with me. This channel is not about entertaining you with business motivation. It is about equipping you with practical wisdom rooted in biblical principles so that you can build businesses that honor God, serve people, and create real financial freedom for you and your family. Every week, I break down timeless business principles, like what we have discussed today, showing you how to apply them in today's marketplace in ways that align with your faith and values. If that is something you need, if you are tired of hype and ready for substance, if you want to learn from history's greatest business minds through a Christian lens, then subscribe to this channel right now. Click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you do not miss the practical strategies we will cover in upcoming content. Because here is what I know. The person who watches this one video and then goes back to scattered thinking and unfocused action will be in the same place a year from now. But the person who commits to consistently learning and applying these principles, video after video, week after week, that person will look back a year from now amazed at how much has changed. So make the choice right now. Subscribe, hit that bell, commit to your own growth, and let me walk with you on this journey of building something that matters. Now let me bring this full circle and talk about what happens after you have established mastery in your one thing. Because the strategy is not to stay narrow forever. The strategy is to start narrow, dominate your domain, and then expand strategically from that foundation of strength. This is exactly what Rockefeller did. Once Standard Oil had become the dominant refiner in the industry, once that foundation was absolutely solid, he began to integrate vertically. He bought pipelines to control transportation. He bought oil fields to secure supply. He bought retail operations to control distribution. But notice the sequence. Master the core first. Then, and only then, expand into adjacent areas. And even then, the expansion was strategic, focused on areas that enhanced or protected the core business. This is a million miles away from the scattered approach of trying to do everything at once from day one. This is deliberate, strategic growth from a position of strength. And here is what that looks like for you practically. Once you have established yourself as the go-to expert in your specific domain, once you have proven systems, satisfied clients, consistent cash flow, and a strong reputation, then you can start to think about strategic expansion. Maybe that means adding a complementary service that serves the same clients. Maybe that means expanding into a related market segment. Maybe that means creating a product that scales your expertise beyond your personal time. But the key is that all of this expansion is built on the foundation of your core excellence. You are not diversifying out of fear or desperation or distraction. You are expanding from strength, from proven capability, from a base that will support the growth. This is how sustainable businesses are built. This is how wealth is created, not through lucky bets and scattered efforts, but through mastery of fundamentals followed by strategic expansion. And I want to emphasize something that I think is absolutely crucial for believers to understand. This approach to business is not at odds with faith. It is the embodiment of faith. It is trusting that God's design for how things work in reality is good and true. It is believing that obedience to wisdom principles will produce fruit even when the path seems slow. It is having the patience to do things right rather than demanding immediate results. It is having the humility to start small rather than needing to impress others with big launches. It is having the integrity to focus on delivering excellence rather than just making money. These are spiritual virtues being lived out in the marketplace. And when you approach business this way, when you commit to focused mastery rooted in excellence and integrity, you are not just building a business. You are being formed into the kind of person who can be trusted with more. You are developing character that will serve you not just in business, but in every area of life. You are learning lessons about discipline, perseverance, faithfulness, and delayed gratification that are desperately needed in a culture that worships instant results and easy money. Rockefeller himself, despite the controversies and criticisms that followed his business practices, was a man of deep faith who tithed from his first paycheck and gave away more money to charitable causes than any American before him. He understood that business success was not just about personal enrichment. It was about stewardship. It was about using the resources God had entrusted to him to create value, provide jobs, and serve others. And while we might debate some of his specific tactics, we cannot deny the power of his core strategy. Focus on becoming exceptionally good at one thing. Master that thing completely. Build from that foundation of mastery. This is not just good business. This is good stewardship. This is taking the talents God has given you and multiplying them rather than burying them in the ground out of fear or squandering them through lack of focus. So where do you go from here? You make a decision. Not next week. Not when conditions are perfect. Not when you have more clarity or more resources or more time. Right now, you decide what your one thing will be. You commit to it. You write it down. You make a plan for how you will pursue mastery in that area over the next 3 years. And then you start, today, not with some grand announcement or elaborate launch, but with the next small step toward excellence in your chosen domain. Maybe that is reaching out to your first potential client. Maybe that is creating your first piece of work. Maybe that is studying under someone who has already mastered what you want to master. Maybe that is simplifying your current offerings down to the one thing you can deliver at the highest level. Whatever it is, do it today. Because here is the truth that no one wants to hear but everyone needs to understand. Time is going to pass anyway. 3 years from now will come whether you spent those years focused on mastering something or spent them scattered and distracted. The question is not whether you have time. You have exactly the same amount of time as everyone else. The question is, what will you do with it? Will you invest it in becoming exceptional at something specific, or will you spend it dabbling in many things and mastering none? And let me leave you with this final thought. The world does not need more people doing a mediocre job at many things. The world needs more people doing an exceptional job at specific things. The kingdom does not need more Christians who are vaguely involved in business. The kingdom needs more believers who have mastered their domains so completely that they become platforms for demonstrating what excellence rooted in faith looks like. This is your opportunity. This is your calling. Not to be everything to everyone, but to be exceptional at one thing for a specific group of people, and through that focused excellence, to build something that matters, something that lasts, something that honors God and serves others, and creates the financial freedom you need to live out your purpose. This is the strategy. This is the path. This is what Rockefeller understood, and what you must understand if you want to turn your business dreams into business reality. Focus is not limitation. Focus is power. Mastery is not restriction. Mastery is freedom. Choose your one thing. Commit to it completely. Pursue excellence relentlessly. And watch what God does through your faithful stewardship of the gifts and calling He has placed in your life. This is how empires are built. This is how legacies are created. This is how ordinary people accomplish extraordinary things, not through complexity and diversification, but through the disciplined pursuit of focused excellence. That was Rockefeller's strategy, and it can be yours too. Now go build something that matters.